She stood in the middle of that glittering Seoul rooftop, in a dress that fit her like a promise kept, two men beside her who had never once asked her to shrink, and across the room, the man who had looked her in the eyes over a dinner she cooked and told her she was not the one, stood completely still, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips, his face wearing an expression she had never seen on him before. Not indifference. Not pity. Something that looked, unmistakably, like devastation. And the worst part, the part that would keep her awake later, was that he started walking toward her. 3 months earlier, none of this was supposed to happen. Welcome, sweethearts, my Cupid family. Tell me where you are watching from, the time, and the weather there. I love seeing where you are tuning in from. Like, subscribe, and share with someone who loves sweet stories. Now get cozy. Today's story is deep, passionate, and unforgettable. Let us begin. 3 months earlier, Amara was standing in front of the mirror in her apartment bathroom at 6 in the morning, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she was not looking at herself the way she used to look at herself. She was not cataloging, not measuring, not finding the spaces between who she was and who she thought she was supposed to be. She was simply looking, the way you look at something you have finally made peace with, and what she saw looking back at her was a woman she recognized completely and was glad to know. Her body had changed. Not in the way before and after photographs dramatize, with dramatic lines and shocking contrasts, but in the way real change happens, quietly, accumulating in small daily decisions, in early mornings and honest effort, and the particular transformation that comes when you stop treating your body like a problem to be solved and start treating it like a home worth taking care of. Her waist curved inward now in a way that was entirely hers, her hips fuller and more confident, her arms showing the quiet definition of weeks of consistent work. She was not the before version of anything. She was simply herself at her strongest, at her most present, at her most completely and unapologetically here. She put in her gold stud earrings and picked up her gym bag from the chair by the door. She was not nervous about the gym anymore. She had not been nervous about the gym for a while now. Apex Fitness in the early morning had become one of her favorite places in the world, and she was aware of how unlikely that would have seemed to the version of herself who had stood at the entrance 8 weeks ago, clutching a membership card with both hands and silently begging herself to be a normal person. Juno was already on the floor when she arrived. He always was. He had set out her equipment in the specific order they worked through it, the mat unrolled precisely, the weights arranged at exact distances, the resistance bands laid flat. She had told him once, about 6 weeks in, that she noticed he did this, that it mattered to her more than she knew how to say, and he had looked at her with those calm, steady, dark eyes and said simply, "You show up every morning. The least I can do is make sure something is ready for you when you get here." She had thought about that sentence for 3 days. "Good morning," he said now, looking up from his tablet, and the small shift in his expression when he saw her, that slight easing, like a breath quietly released, was something she had stopped pretending not to notice. "Good morning," she said back. Suk arrived 7 minutes later, slightly breathless as always, gym bag falling off one shoulder, holding 2 protein bars with the triumphant energy of someone who had accomplished something significant before 8 in the morning. He tossed one to Juno without looking and held the other out to Amara with a grin that took up his entire face. "Chocolate peanut," he said. Obviously. She took it. She bit into it. She did not say anything, but the look she gave him communicated everything, and he received it with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had learned exactly what to pay attention to. Juno watched this exchange from the side with an expression that was almost imperceptible in its warmth and entirely readable to anyone paying close enough attention. The 3 of them had not put a name on what existed between them. They had not drawn lines around it or asked it to fit a shape borrowed from someone else's life. What they had instead was this: a rhythm that had become as natural as breathing, morning sessions and evening walks, and the particular ease of people who had stopped performing for each other and started simply being. Amara knew, in the honest, quiet part of herself she reserved for truths she was still learning to hold, that she had feelings for both of them that were real and specific and not going anywhere. She also knew that both of them felt something for her that neither had fully named out loud since the ramen restaurant confession weeks ago. And somehow, in the specific way that the most important things sometimes arrange themselves, this unnamed thing between the 3 of them was the most stable and nourishing relationship dynamic she had ever been inside. She was not going to be the one to complicate it before it was ready. She was, however, going to do the deadlift sequence that Juno had designed for her this week, and she was going to do it without breaking form, and she was going to feel extraordinary afterward. She did all three. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday. She was at her desk at the Cultural Exchange Organization where she worked as a junior researcher, eating lunch and reviewing notes for the African and Korean artistic traditions project she had been developing, when her phone screen lit up with a notification from an email address she had not seen in 8 months and had not expected to see again. She put down her chopsticks. The subject line said, "It would mean a lot if you came." She stared at the screen for a long time without opening it. His name was Daniel. She had spent months trying to stop saying it out loud, stop typing it into search bars, stop looking for his face in crowds. He had left her on a quiet Tuesday evening over a dinner she cooked, telling her she was not the one, that he cared for her but was not in love with her, and she had smiled and told him she understood. She had not understood at all. What she had understood only later, slowly and painfully, was that she had made herself small for someone who never even noticed the sacrifice. She opened the email. It was an invitation to an industry networking event. A rooftop gathering for professionals in the cultural exchange and arts sector in Seoul. His organization was co-hosting. The message was carefully worded, warm without being inappropriate, specific enough to feel personal, general enough to maintain plausible deniability. He hoped she was well. He thought she might find the professional connections valuable. He would be glad to see a familiar face. She read it 3 times. Then she closed her phone, finished her lunch, and went back to her research notes. She did not think about it for the rest of the afternoon. She thought about it for the entire rest of the afternoon. She told Zara about it that evening on the phone. Zara, who had sat across a breakfast table from her 8 weeks ago watching her push eggs around a plate, who had bullied her into a gym membership, who had been her witness through everything. Zara's response was immediate and characteristically undecorated. "Delete it," she said. Amara was quiet. "You are quiet," Zara said. "Why are you quiet?" "Delete it and be quiet about deleting it." "I am just thinking," Amara said. "About what?" Zara said. "About the man who sat across a table you sat and told you that you were not the one. That man. You are thinking about that man's invitation." "It is a professional event," Amara said. "Everything Daniel does is wrapped in something that sounds professional or reasonable or mature," Zara said. "That is how he operates. That is how he got you to smile and say you understood when you did not understand at all." Amara looked at the ceiling of her apartment. "I am not the same person I was 8 months ago," she said. There was a pause on Zara's end. "No," Zara said, and her voice was different now, softer. "You are absolutely not. And that is exactly why you should delete it. Because you have worked too hard to become who you are right now to walk back into a room he is controlling." Amara said nothing. "What are you actually thinking about doing?" Zara said. "I have not decided anything," Amara said. But she had. Somewhere underneath the careful neutrality of that sentence, she had already begun to decide. She did not tell Juno and Suk about the invitation immediately. She carried it with her through 2 more morning sessions, folded into her chest like something she was not sure how to unfold in front of them. She noticed Juno noticing that something was different about her on the Thursday session. He did not ask. He simply adjusted the workout, gave her more space, checked in with his eyes in the way he did when he was making room for her to come to something in her own time. Suk was less subtle. On Friday, he showed up at the smoothie bar after their session with a container of suya and sat beside her and said, without preamble, "What is going on with you this week?" She looked at him. "Nothing," she said. He gave her the look he gave her when he had already decided not to believe whatever she was about to say. "There is an event," she said. "An industry thing. My ex is co-hosting it and he sent me an invitation." The silence that followed was the particular kind of silence that happens when someone is choosing very carefully what to say next. Suk put down his smoothie. His expression had changed. The warmth was still there, but underneath it something careful and alert had appeared, like a light going on in a room that had been dim. "Are you going?" he asked. "I am thinking about it," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked his smoothie back up and took a slow, deliberate sip and said, "Okay." "Just okay?" she said. "You are not the same person you were when he knew you," Suk said, looking at the counter rather than at her. "Whatever you decide, that is true." He is going to walk into that room and he is going to see someone he does not recognize. And I think part of you already knows that, and I think that is why you are considering going." She looked at him. He looked back at her with those warm, bright eyes that were currently doing a very poor job of hiding what was happening behind them. Juno appeared from the direction of the equipment room, took one look at both of them at the smoothie bar, and came to sit on her other side. "He sent her an invitation," Suk said. Juno was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Are you going to go?" "I think I might," she said. Juno nodded once. The precise single nod that meant he had received the information and was processing it with the full weight it deserved. "Then we will go with you," he said. Simply. Like it was not even a question. She looked at him. "You do not have to do that," she said. He looked back at her with those calm, steady eyes and said, "We know." The event was 3 days away, and Amara had not told anyone else she was going. She had accepted the invitation with a single professional reply that she typed and deleted 4 times before settling on something that said, "Thank you for the invitation, I will be there," and nothing else. No warmth. No question asking if he was well. No door left open. Just the facts, clean and sealed. She had then put her phone face down on her desk and stared at her research notes for 20 minutes without reading a single word. The next morning at the gym she was different again, but different in a new way. Not the heavy, distracted different of earlier in the week. Something sharper. Something that looked, if you knew how to read her the way both men had learned to read her, like a woman who had made a decision and was now walking toward it. Juno saw it immediately. He adjusted nothing about the session this time. He pushed her instead. The new sequence he had been building toward for 2 weeks, the one that required her absolute presence and left no room for anything else. She worked through it without breaking. When she finished the final set and stood straight and looked up, he was watching her with that expression she had come to know as his version of pride, restrained and certain and entirely genuine. "You are ready for whatever is coming," he said. She knew he was not talking about the workout. Suk arrived that morning with something he had been clearly planning because it was too specific to be spontaneous. He had a garment bag over one shoulder. She stared at it. "What is that?" she said. He held it out with the energy of someone delivering a gift they have been thinking about for days. "Open it," he said. She took the garment bag, unzipped it slowly, and pulled out a dress. It was the color of deep plum with gold threading, structured at the top with a neckline that was elegant without being aggressive, the fabric falling in a way that suggested movement and confidence simultaneously. It was exactly the kind of dress that a woman wears when she wants to walk into a room and say without saying a single word that she has arrived. She looked at him. "How did you know my size?" she said. He shrugged with his whole body in the way he did when he was trying to appear more casual than he felt. "I pay attention," he said. "I always pay attention." She held the dress against herself and looked toward the mirror across the gym floor. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Suk." He looked at her. "Thank you," she said. And she meant it with everything she had. He nodded, his warm, bright eyes doing the thing they did when he felt something too large for the brightness to contain. Then he pointed at Juno. "He picked the color," he said. "I picked the cut." She looked at Juno. Juno looked at his tablet with the expression of a man who was absolutely not going to discuss this further. She laughed. It was the kind of laugh that comes from somewhere so genuine it surprises even the person laughing. And in that moment, standing in the gym in her workout clothes, holding a deep plum dress chosen by 2 Korean men who had memorized the specific way she moved through the world, she felt something so full and so warm in her chest that it was almost frightening. Almost. The night of the event arrived with the specific quality of evenings that feel like they have been waiting for you. She got ready in her apartment alone, which she needed. She needed the quiet. She needed to stand in front of her mirror and look at herself without anyone else's eyes in the room, to see what she saw and decide what it meant before anyone else got to weigh in. The dress fit the way Suk had promised it would. The deep plum with gold threading running through sat against her deep brown skin like it had been mixed specifically for her, warm and rich and completely undeniable. Her curves filled the structure of the dress exactly, her waist cinching in naturally, her hips moving the fabric the way the fabric was meant to be moved. She looked at the mirror for a long time. She did not catalogue. She did not measure. She simply looked at a woman she recognized and was proud to be. Her phone lit up. A message from Suk. It said only, "We are downstairs." And then from Juno, 30 seconds later, a single message. Take your time. She picked up her clutch. She switched off the bathroom light. She walked out of her apartment and down to the lobby where two Korean men in fitted dark suits were waiting for her, and the expressions on both their faces when she came through the lobby doors were the kinds of expressions that a woman carries with her for the rest of her life. The rooftop venue was everything the invitation had implied and more. Glass and light, and the Seoul skyline laid out beneath them like something from a film, the kind of setting that makes ordinary people feel significant and significant people feel electric. The event was already full when they arrived. The low hum of professional conversation mixing with jazz from a live quartet in the corner, waitstaff moving through the crowd with trays of champagne and elegant small plates. They walked in together. She was in the center, the way she always was between them. Juno on her left with his quiet, composed presence, Suk on her right with his warm, alive energy, and the three of them moved through the entrance of that rooftop with a collective quality of arrival that made people look up. She had been to professional events before. She knew how rooms worked, how people assessed, how eyes traveled and landed and moved on. She knew the particular feeling of walking into a space and wondering if you belonged. She did not wonder that tonight. She moved through the room with her shoulders back and her chin level and the dress doing exactly what Suk had promised it would do, and people noticed, not in an intrusive way, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in the way that presence commands attention when it is genuine and unhurried and completely settled in itself. Juno leaned slightly toward her and said quietly, "You know, everyone in this room is going to want to talk to you tonight." She glanced at him. "Is that your professional assessment?" she said. He looked back at her with those steady dark eyes. "It is an observation," he said, "about someone who has been impossible not to notice since the first morning she walked into my gym." She looked away before he could see what that did to her face. Suk, who had missed nothing, handed her a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and said completely casually, "He is right, you know. He has been wanting to say that for weeks. I have been watching him almost say it for weeks. It has been very entertaining." Juno gave Suk a look that communicated a great deal without words. Suk received it with complete and characteristic absence of remorse. She saw Daniel before he saw her. He was standing near the far edge of the rooftop, talking to two men in suits, his posture exactly as she remembered it, the particular way he held himself in professional settings, confident and slightly performative, like he was always aware of being observed and had made peace with that awareness a long time ago. He looked the same. That was the first thing she noticed. He looked exactly the same, and she had expected that to mean something, to pull something, but it did not. He looked the same, and she felt nothing that resembled the things she used to feel, no tightening in the chest, no complicated grief, no involuntary inventory of everything she had done wrong. She felt, instead, a very clean and very quiet sense of her own distance from who she used to be. She turned back to Juno and Suk, who were both, she realized, watching her with the particular focused attention of people who have been watching for exactly this moment. "That is him," she said. Quietly. Not a question. Juno looked in the direction she had indicated. Said nothing. His jaw did something very small and very controlled. Suk looked too. The warmth in his expression did not disappear, but something underneath it went very still, the way water goes still before it decides what to do. "Are you okay?" Juno asked. She thought about the question genuinely. "Yes," she said. And she meant it. Daniel saw her 20 minutes later. She was mid-conversation with a senior curator from a gallery she had been trying to build a relationship with professionally, genuinely engaged, laughing at something the curator said, when she felt the specific quality of being looked at from across a room shift into something else entirely. She turned her head. He was standing approximately 15 feet away, and he had stopped moving completely. His champagne glass was halfway to his lips and had been there, she suspected, for several seconds. He was looking at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before in all the time she had known him. She held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds. Then she turned back to the curator and continued the conversation. Suk, standing just behind her right shoulder with a plate of something he had acquired from somewhere, leaned forward slightly and said very quietly near her ear, "He looks like he has just seen something he was not prepared for." "I know," she said, equally quietly, without turning around. "Good," Suk said, and said nothing else. It was Juno who noticed Daniel beginning to move toward her. He did not say anything. He simply shifted his position very slightly, moving to stand beside her rather than behind her, close enough that the three of them formed a natural unit, visible and complete. It was not a territorial gesture. It was not aggressive. It was simply the quiet architectural certainty of someone who had decided where he was going to be and was there. She felt him move and understood immediately what he was doing and loved him for it in the specific and enormous way she had been loving both of them quietly for weeks. Daniel reached them. He was looking at her with the full weight of everything the evening had assembled in him, the shock of her appearance, the specific beauty of the dress, the way she carried herself now, and underneath all of that something that was starting to look, unmistakably, like regret. "Amara," he said. His voice was exactly the same. That was the strange thing. Everything about him was exactly the same and she was entirely different, and the distance between those two facts was so vast and so clarifying that she almost wanted to thank him for it. "Daniel," she said. Her voice was steady, warm without being open. The voice of a woman who was not afraid of this conversation and was not going to pretend to be. He looked at Juno. He looked at Suk. He looked back at her. "You look," he started, and then stopped and started again. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she said simply. Another pause. He was recalibrating. She could see it happening in real time. The man she had once loved, trying to find the version of her he had prepared for and discovering she was not there. "I was hoping we could talk," he said. "Catch up properly. It has been a while." She felt Suk go slightly more still on her right. She felt Juno's presence on her left with that particular quality of attention he carried when something mattered. She looked at Daniel. And for one suspended moment the old wound opened just enough that she could feel its edges. Not because she wanted him back. Not because his words were working. But because grief does not always need an invitation. Because she had loved him genuinely and he had left, and some part of the body remembers that regardless of how far the mind has traveled. She felt it. She did not move toward it. "Sure," she said. "We can catch up." Quick pause. If this story has you feeling the love, hit that like button and share your thoughts below. Alright, let us continue. There is so much more waiting. They found a quieter corner of the rooftop, a small seating area near the railing with the Seoul skyline spread behind them like a backdrop that knew it was being used for something significant. Juno and Suk did not follow. They stayed where they were, visible across the rooftop, both of them doing a very careful performance of being engaged in other things that she could see through completely and loved them for attempting. Daniel sat across from her and for a moment just looked at her the way people look at things they did not properly see when they had them. "I did not expect you to be here," he said. "You invited me," she said. "I know," he said. "I did not expect you to come. And I definitely did not expect," he gestured slightly toward where Juno and Suk were standing, "that." She said nothing. She waited. "Are you?" He paused. "Are you happy?" She considered the question with the full and genuine attention it deserved. "Yes," she said. "Very." He nodded slowly. Something moved across his face that she did not have a name for and did not need one. "I have thought about," he started. "About the way things ended. About what I said." He looked at the table between them. "I was not kind. I told myself I was being honest, but I was not kind, and those are not always the same thing." She looked at him. She was listening. She was not leaning forward. "I told you that you were not the one," he said. "And I meant it in the way I understood it then. But what I did not understand then, what I think I understand better now looking at you sitting here, is that the problem was never you. It was never that you were not enough." The words landed. She let them land. She did not flinch and she did not soften. "Then what was it?" she said. He was quiet for a moment. "I was not ready for someone like you," he said finally. "You needed someone who was paying attention, and I was not paying attention. I was looking for something I could not have named, and I convinced myself it was not with you. And I was wrong." She sat with that for a moment. Across the rooftop, she could see Suk, who was holding a conversation with someone, but whose eyes kept traveling back to her with an expression he was making absolutely no effort to conceal. She could see Juno standing perfectly still with his drink, watching the city skyline, and she knew with the specific certainty of someone who had learned to read him that he was not looking at the city at all. She looked back at Daniel. "I believe you," she said. "I believe that you mean that right now, in this moment, looking at who I am tonight." But I need you to understand something. She paused, finding the exact words. The woman sitting across from you right now, the one you're looking at like you are seeing something you lost, she did not happen because you left. She was always here. She was just waiting for people who knew how to pay attention. He looked at her. And she has those people now, Amara said. So what you are feeling right now, whatever this is, I do not say this unkindly, but it is yours to carry, not mine. The silence between them was the specific kind of silence that follows when something true has been said clearly and there is nothing left to negotiate. Daniel looked at the table. Then he looked at her. Then he nodded, once, with the particular quality of someone accepting something they cannot change. I am glad you are happy, he said. I genuinely mean that. I know you do, she said. And I genuinely believe you. She stood up. She smoothed the beautiful dress over her hips. She looked at him one final time with the clear eyes of a woman who had nothing left to prove to this person and had known it, she realized, from the moment she walked through the door. Take care of yourself, Daniel, she said. And she walked away. She walked back across the rooftop toward two Korean men who both turned to look at her at exactly the same moment she started moving toward them, and the expressions on their faces when they saw her face, when they read in the set of her chin and the calm of her eyes and the particular quality of her stride that she was completely okay, were the kinds of expressions she would carry with her for a very long time. Suk reached her first. He looked at her face carefully, the way he always did when something important had happened, reading her the way he had learned to read her over weeks of paying the kind of attention that changes people. You good? He said. Better than good, she said. His face broke into the widest, most genuinely relieved smile she had ever seen on him, and she laughed at the sight of it. A real laugh. The kind that comes from somewhere completely uncomplicated. Juno reached them a moment later. He did not ask anything. He simply looked at her with those calm, steady eyes, and the question was there, and her answer was in her face, and he received it with one slow exhale that she suspected had been held for the better part of an hour. Can we go, she said. I want ramen. Suk already had his jacket off one shoulder. Juno was already turning toward the exit. And the three of them left that rooftop together, walking back through the glittering crowd and out into the Seoul night, and she was in the middle, the way she always was, and it felt exactly the way it always felt. Like exactly where she was supposed to be. The ramen place under the staircase was exactly as they had left it the last time, small and warm and secret feeling. The kind of place that holds the specific atmosphere of conversations that matter. They settled into their usual arrangement without discussing it, Amara in the middle, Juno on her left, Suk on her right, steam rising from their bowls, the Seoul night humming quietly outside the thick walls. Nobody said anything for a while. This was one of the things she loved most about the three of them together. The silences were never awkward. They were never the silences of people who had run out of things to say. They were the silences of people who were comfortable enough with each other to simply exist in the same space without filling every moment with noise. She had not had that with anyone before these two men. She had always been the one filling silences, smoothing over the uncomfortable gaps, making sure everyone around her was at ease at the expense of her own. She was not doing that tonight. She was simply sitting between two people she trusted completely, eating ramen that was exactly as good as she remembered, letting the evenings settle around all three of them like something warm and earned. Suk spoke first. Of course he did. You were incredible tonight, he said. Not as a compliment exactly. More like a fact he had been holding for the last hour and finally put down on the table between them. She looked at him. I was just myself, she said. He looked back at her with those warm, bright eyes that were doing nothing to conceal what was happening behind them. I know, he said. That is what I mean. She felt Juno shift slightly on her left. She turned to look at him. He was looking at his bowl. Then he looked up and met her eyes with that direct, calm gaze that always felt like being seen more precisely than she was prepared for. What he said earlier, Juno said. At the party. What did he say to you? She considered how much to share. Then she remembered that these were two people who had earned the truth. He said he was wrong, she said. That I was always enough. That he was not ready for someone who needed to be paid attention to. Juno was quiet for a moment. And what did you say, he asked. She smiled. She told him the problem was never mine to carry. And then I walked away. Something moved across Juno's face that was more open than his usual expression. Something that had been carefully held for a long time, releasing just slightly, like a window opening in a room that had been closed all winter. Good, he said. Simply and completely. Good. Suk pointed his chopsticks at Juno with great satisfaction. See, he said. He does have feelings. I told you. I have been telling everyone. Nobody believes me. Juno looked at Suk with the expression of a man exercising considerable restraint. Amara laughed. It came from somewhere so genuine and so uncomplicated that it surprised her with its own lightness. She laughed, and both men looked at her, and the look on their faces, that specific combination of Juno's quiet warmth and Suk's complete unguarded delight, was the most beautiful thing she had seen all evening. More beautiful than the rooftop. More beautiful than the dress. More beautiful than Daniel's regret. This, she thought. This right here is what I stayed for. Daniel's message arrived the following morning. She was in the kitchen making her tea, still in her oversized sleep shirt, when her phone screen lit up on the counter. She saw his name and went very still. She put down the kettle. She picked up the phone. She read the message. It was short, thoughtful, carefully constructed in the way that all of Daniel's communications were carefully constructed, saying exactly enough and not one word more. He had been thinking about their conversation. He felt like they had left things incomplete. He was not asking for anything she was not willing to give. He just thought that if she was open to it, coffee might be a good idea. Just to talk. As two people who had meant something to each other and still respected each other. No expectations. She put the phone face down on the counter. She finished making her tea. She picked the phone back up and read the message again. The honest truth, the one she sat with quietly over her tea in the morning light of her Seoul apartment, was that part of her wanted to go. Not because she wanted Daniel back. She knew with a clarity that had been building in her for months that she did not want him back. But because there was something unfinished in her, not between them, but within herself. Some final conversation she needed to have, not with him exactly but through him. Some last piece of the old Amara that needed to be looked at directly and released properly. She texted back. Coffee tomorrow. 1 hour. The place near my office. She put the phone down. She went to get ready for the gym. She told both men that morning. Not asking permission. Not looking for approval. Simply telling them because they were her people, and her people deserved to know what was happening in her life. Suk's reaction was immediate and entirely visible on his face. He went through approximately 4 different expressions in 3 seconds before settling on something that was trying very hard to be casual and was not casual at all. You are going, he said. I am going, she said. Alone, he said. Alone, she said. He nodded very slowly. Okay, he said. He picked up his water bottle. He put it down. He picked it up again. Suk, she said gently. He looked at her. I know who I am now, she said. I know what I have. Nothing he says is going to change that. Something in Suk's expression shifted. The anxious energy settled. He looked at her for a long moment and then he nodded, once, with a certainty that was quieter and more serious than his usual register. I know, he said. I know you do. Juno, who had been listening from the mat where he was reviewing her program notes, looked up when Suk finished speaking. He looked at her with those calm, steady eyes for a long moment. Then he reached into the pocket of his trainer jacket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper and held it out to her. She took it. She unfolded it. His small, precise handwriting. 4 words. You already know everything. She folded it carefully. She put it in the inside pocket of her gym bag next to the first note he had ever left her. Then she picked up her water bottle and looked at both of them and said, Right. Are we training or not? They trained. The coffee place near her office was small and warm and entirely neutral, which was what she had chosen it for. No memories attached to it. No significance. Just good coffee and enough ambient noise to keep the conversation honest. Daniel was already there when she arrived. He stood when he saw her, which she did not remember him doing before, and he looked at her with an expression that was different from the rooftop. Less shock. More something that had settled overnight into a specific and quiet kind of sorrow. She sat across from him. She ordered her usual. She waited. He talked for a while. She let him. He was articulate and self-aware and genuine in the way that made him compelling, acknowledging what he had done, taking responsibility without deflecting, saying the things she had wanted to hear from him 8 months ago over a dinner she had cooked that had gone cold while he explained why she was not the one. She listened. She did not lean forward. And then he said the thing that was the real reason for this coffee. She could feel it coming before he said it, the slight shift in his posture, the way he looked at his cup and then at her with a directness that was trying to be brave. "I think I made a mistake," he said. "I think I let go of something real because I was not ready for it. And I am ready now. And I know that asking you this is," he paused. "I know how it sounds. But I would rather ask and know than not ask and spend the rest of my life wondering." The room was very quiet around her. She looked at him. At this man who had sat across a table she sat and chosen to leave. At this man who was now sitting across a table she had chosen and asking to come back. At the specific and very human irony of that. She felt the pull. She would be dishonest if she said she did not. Not toward him exactly, but toward the familiar. Toward the known. Toward the version of herself that had spent so long making herself available to be chosen that being chosen felt like resolution, even when it was not. She felt it. She sat with it. She looked at it directly the way she had learned to look at difficult things directly over the last several months. And then she asked herself the question that cut through everything. Is he paying attention to who I am now? Or to who he remembers? The answer arrived immediately and completely. He was looking at her the way people look at something they lost. He was not seeing her. He was seeing the shape of what he used to have and feeling the absence of it and calling that feeling love. She knew the difference now. She had two people in her life who had never once confused those two things. Two people who had watched her become herself and loved what they saw not because it reminded them of something they wanted, but because it was genuinely and specifically and completely her. She looked at Daniel across the small table with its good coffee and its neutral walls and its complete absence of history between them. "I hear everything you are saying," she said. "And I believe that you mean it right now in this moment." She paused. "But I need you to really hear me when I say this. What you are feeling right now is not love. It is recognition. You are seeing who I am now and recognizing what you walked away from. And that is not the same thing as being ready for me." He was quiet. "I have people in my life now who have been paying attention since the beginning," she said. "Not to who I was going to become. To who I was in every ordinary moment along the way. And that is the standard now. That is what I know I deserve." She looked at him with clear eyes and no anger and no grief. "You taught me that by leaving. So in a way, I owe you something for that. But it is not another chance. It is just gratitude." The silence between them was the final kind. The kind that does not leave room for a counter-argument because everything has been said that needed to be said and said honestly and the conversation is complete. Daniel looked at his coffee. Then he looked at her. And the expression on his face was not what she expected. It was not hurt or defensive or manipulative. It was something simpler and more genuine than any of that. It was the expression of someone who had just been told the truth by someone who meant them no harm and had recognized the truth for what it was. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "I hope you know that." "I am learning," she said. "Every day." She stood. She picked up her bag. She looked at him one final time with all the warmth and all the closure she had. "Take care of yourself, Daniel," she said. And she meant it completely and finally and without remainder. She walked out of the coffee shop into the Seoul afternoon and stood on the pavement for a moment in the bright, ordinary light of a Wednesday and felt something she did not have an immediate word for. Not triumph. Not relief exactly. Something quieter and more permanent than both. She felt free. She went straight to the gym. She did not text ahead. She did not announce herself. She simply pushed through the entrance doors of Apex Fitness and walked across the polished floor toward the mat where Juno was working with another client, and the smoothie bar where Suk was reviewing something on his phone, and both of them looked up at exactly the same moment she walked in, and whatever they saw on her face told them everything they needed to know before she said a single word. Suk put his phone down. His whole face opened into that smile, the real one, the one that lived underneath the brightness, the truest one. "There she is," he said. Not to anyone in particular. Just to the room. Juno finished what he was saying to his client, excused himself with quiet professionalism, and walked toward her. He stopped in front of her and looked at her with those steady dark eyes for a long moment, and then he said, simply and completely, "Welcome back." She looked at him. I never left, she said. No, he said. You did not. And something in the way he said it, in the specific weight and warmth of those 3 words, made her understand that he was not talking about the coffee meeting. He was not talking about Daniel. He was talking about her. About the fact that through all of it, through the heartbreak and the healing and the gym and the party and the coffee and every complicated human moment in between, she had never once lost herself. She had come close. She had felt the edges of the old wound. But she had never left. She had stayed. 3 weeks later, Amara stood in front of the mirror in her apartment bathroom at 6 in the morning and looked at herself the way she had been looking at herself for months now, without cataloging, without measuring, simply looking at a woman she recognized and was proud to be. Her body was strong and curved and entirely hers. Her eyes were clear. Her shoulders were back. Her gym bag was packed and sitting by the door. On her bedside table was a small framed botanical print of a plant from the corner of Apex Fitness. Beside it a small folded piece of paper, the first note Juno had ever left her. And beside that, the most recent note, which had arrived in her locker 2 days ago in 2 different handwritings, one small and precise, one looser and warmer, and had said simply, "Look how far you have come." She picked up her gym bag. She walked out of her apartment into the Seoul morning, the city golden and unhurried around her, the gym 12 minutes away, 2 people waiting for her who had memorized the specific way she moved through the world and had never once asked her to move through it differently. She walked with her shoulders back and her chin level. She walked like a woman who knew exactly where she was going and was glad with her whole self to be going there. She walked like a woman who was enough. She always had been. You have reached the end, and that makes you a cherished part of our Cupid family. Thank you for all your love and support. Do not forget to leave a comment. I will be reading and replying to every single one, and stay subscribed because the next story of desire, passion, and beautiful love is already on its way.